Hey folks, welcome back to 3Zen. So now we've done a single engine pattern to a touch and go, and we're on our way out to the area. Probably at 17,000 feet, let's call it, 300 knots, and heading out, awaiting area assignment. Now at Vance, we had three banks of areas. They were defined by radials and DME. So we call them tubes at that time. So tube 1 was defined by a couple radials, and they ran from 28 miles to 40 miles. Tube 2 ran from 40 to 63, I think, and tube 3 from 63 to 85. And then again, they were all defined by different radials coming off of the Vance TACAN. So we would typically get tube 2 beginning with tube A, and we'd stay in that area until another aircraft came up behind us and would push us into tube B and then tube C, and then by the time we got to tube D, we were almost out of gas for aerobatic profile anyway. We would be thinking about recovery. So it worked out pretty well. Tube 2, as I might have mentioned, was the primary contact areas. They were the contact areas. Tube 1 could be, of course, it could be used for contact, but could also be used for formation. They were quite large. And tube 3 was almost exclusively reserved for formation flights. Okay, so now you got the picture. We're awaiting assignment. Contact Kansas City Center if we haven't, and they assign the area. If they assign, like Reno 17, you're cleared to tube Charlie, we would just drive through tube A and tube B. Now on the way, we could do some progressive maneuvering, like barrel rolls, aileron rolls, anything that kept us moving forward to get into there, because we got people coming behind us. So we get into the area. I can't remember if they took us up to 23,000, which would have been the top of the area, or let us chug out there at 17. Doesn't matter. Once we got into the area, you might do a little bit of maneuvering like that just to clear the area, make sure that you didn't see anybody else in there. And then we would use an altitude of 17,000, airspeed of 300 knots as a reference point to set up for maneuvering. Now, I loved instructing at Vance because they had section lines. These section lines were a mile apart, ran east-west, north-south. How could you screw it up? I've seen it done. So anyway, I would always say to a student, I'd say, okay, what are the parameters for doing a loop? Just to begin with something simple here. Well, sir, we do, there'd be 500 knots, 450 to 500 knots, 4 to 5 Gs. Okay, let's go ahead and try one. So what I would teach them to do would be, instead of just pushing the nose over, I'd teach them to do an aileron roll, using a maneuver to set up for a maneuver is what I was hoping to do, and roll out 20 degrees nose low. Now that translated to the canopy bow here on the horizon. That gave them 20 degrees nose low. And you went to mill power, that would give them 50 knots per 1,000 feet of descent. That was perfect because it put us in the bottom of our areas at 500 knots, which is just what we wanted. And then clear above you and just bring the nose up, coming to 4.5 to 5 Gs. And as you came up, as you lose sight of the section line, then start looking left and right, keeping the horizon equal distance in your pull. Now, a tendency in the early stage, you're flying with your right hand, was to pull off to the right instead of pulling straight back. You can't see my hand there, can you? Pulling off to the right is pulling straight back. Somebody just showed up on the ring. Okay, I'm at 17,000 feet, and I'm going 450, 500 knots. I don't have time for them. Okay, so as they come on their back, now you want to have them look up, find that section line. Now, this was just the easy part. Just pull back up the section line and then pull out. And then pull into the vertical, and then again do a clearing turn, and then level off and set up for the next maneuver. So that would be the first maneuver to do. Simple, isn't it? But I've seen it screwed up. The most common screw up was when somebody would pull off to the right like that, and they'd end up just getting a little bit off, but it just messed up the whole maneuver. The other thing, on a couple of occasions, as they were starting uphill, weren't cognizant of where their left hand was, and they ease off on the throttles. Not good. You lose airspeed that way. All right, so we do that, and then we might do a lazy 8. So a lazy 8 was a little bit different. You set up 17,000 feet, 300 knots, and you started the airplane up and just cracked the aileron a little bit, and then coming up, you wanted to be at the apex of the turn, 45 degrees, and you continue the roll, and then you wanted to start the airplane back down. So you wanted the nose to come through 90 degrees on another section line at, I can't remember what the airspeed was they wanted at that point. Anyway, that was there, and then let it come down, start your rollout back this way, and then hit 300 knots or 350 knots as you came through the horizon, and just continue on. Do a lazy 8. Okay. Come out of that, and then might want to do a barrel roll. Those were fun to do. 400 knots, I think 95%. And came a section line. You roll off 45 degrees, started a little bit of a dive, roll off 45 degrees, and then came up wings level at that 45 degree point, and you just picked a point out on the horizon and just rolled around it like that. And then again, you always wanted to shoot to come out of the maneuver at this around the same airspeed you entered it at. From there, we go into a stall series, or the two vertical recoveries, or two recoveries, a nose high or a nose low recovery, which the IP would set them up for, or at any given time. If the loop was going south, you just say, okay, recover, and they'd execute a vertical recovery at that point. Nose high, nose low recovery, and then the stall series. Set them up, make sure the airspeed's below 240, speed brakes neutral and up. Always check the speed brakes to be neutral and up, and I'll explain that in another video here. Airspeed below 240, gear down, flaps. Depending on what setting you briefed, you were going to do the stall series. And then what you did, you rolled into a simulated final turn and let the airspeed bleed off until you picked up a buffet on the wings. And once you started picking up that buffet on the wings, that was the beginning entry of the stall. So at that point, you roll wings level and go to afterburner. Don't touch anything else. Just go to unload the aircraft and let it fly out. So we do that, and then we do a straight ahead stall. Essentially the same thing. We just get the airplane configured and pull the power back, I think 85%, and just let the airplane, the airspeed bleed off. And again, you pick up that buffeting and so forth. On occasion, we would take the airplane and let them go into a fully developed full aft stick stall. Now that's where we just brought the stick all the way back, and at that point, this thing was rocking and rolling, going downhill, and it sunk like a sewer pipe. It just went boom, 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 all the way down. But then you get out of it, just unload the airplane and gather flying airspeed. When you had flying airspeed, get your gear and flaps. You didn't want to overspeed them. You had to watch for that. So we do those three maneuvers, or those maneuvers out there, and that was about all the gas we had. On occasion, of course, I would have, if the student was having a problem with a particular maneuver, there was latitude for me to take the airplane and offer a demonstration. And it wasn't that tight, but it was tight. You had to stay up on your game. One of the things I used to do is to really encourage the student to be cognizant of area orientation. You had to be, because you had to know where you are, and you didn't want to bust the area. You run into potential hitting someone else that's assigned in a different area. But on occasion, I would say to him, okay, Jim, let's turn to the left. Okay, so he'd turn to the left and do a maneuver. Oftentimes, they wouldn't ask you why. And so okay, Jim, how about giving me a right-hand turn here? So you could turn to the right. What they didn't know at the time was every spring, we would get these combines coming up from Amarillo, Texas, harvesting wheat. And I used to love watching those things. So I'd be out there in the area, and these combines, you've seen them in National Geographic, they just lined up one after another. And Enid, Oklahoma, was known as the wheat capital of the world. Anyway, these combines would line up. Oh, it was fantastic to see from 17,000 feet. They'd line up, and they'd just be moving north up from Oklahoma, then into Kansas, and then on up. They'd end up in Saskatchewan, but I didn't have enough gas to follow them. So anyway, I'd just sit there and watch them for a little bit until it became obvious it's time to get back to work. Never said anything to them about it. I just gave them something to do to keep them busy while I was checking out the combines. Did that for 3 years. I used to love watching those guys. So now we've done our area work and call for recovery back into Vance. And I think that's where I'll pick it up in the next video. Thanks for stopping by. By the way, the wheat's going great. See ya.